Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. Day 2 of the 5th Annual Zero Waste Conference, virtual style. The current state of the world brings us to the theme of this year's conference, empowering a generation of equitable waste reducers amidst global crises. My name is Amanda, and I'm the program manager of the Waste Reduction and Resource Awareness Program. And before we dive into the program, I want to acknowledge that I'm speaking to all of you from the land of the Wiyot people in Arcata, California. Arcata is known as Gudini in the Wiyot language, meaning among the redwoods. Wiyot people continue to remain in relationship to these lands through ceremony, culture, and stewardship. They are important parts to not only the history of this place, but in the continuing knowledge and future of this place. So if you don't know whose land you're on right now, I encourage you to go find out. Educate yourself about the history of the place you live, familiarize yourself with the work those tribal peoples are doing and how you can support that work. I am pleased to introduce our keynote speaker for the conference, Dior St. Hillaire, all the way from the Bronx, New York. Dior is the founder of Green Fiend and Green Fiend Organics, a worker-owned cooperative designed to collect and process organic waste locally into compost and renewable energy. She uses hip hop to teach sustainability while advocating for waste equity in the South Bronx. As a worker owner, she believes that we have the power in our labor, and by working cooperatively, we can begin to break up with capitalism. So if you have any questions during the presentation, you can use the Q&A function and we'll get to them at the end. So without further ado, I offer a big, warm welcome to Dior St. Hillaire.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that land acknowledgement and for also welcoming me here. Y'all just bear with me, just, few house rules. I have a 5-year-old, so she may want to make her presence felt at this particular point in time. And so just bear with me if that is the case. But in thinking about all things with land, we are very much aware that our children are part of it. And also I am getting over a little bit of, I would say my body is detoxing. I try not to claim sickness in the body. And so, yes, I may sound a little bit nasally, but all is well, no worries. I am fine, I am healthy, and I am here and excited to be here. So I am going to, what I would like to do, to be quite honest, in order to start, in order to ground the conversation, I'm actually going to read something to you as you listen to the lovely sounds as you were listening to when you first came here in the waiting room. But I want to read it to you because I think it's important as I talk about this concept. And so some people come because they hear the controversy in composting capitalism. Others really know and understand my work, or you're just coming to learn about it. So I am going to let you hear the smooth sounds of chill hop. Those of you who don't know, I use hip hop in everything that I do. So I will let you listen to that. I'm going to share my screen and let you just kind of watch the decomposition process a little bit while I speak to you and just read this one little piece to you, and then we'll jump right into the presentation. So let me let that go. You feel that? Do you feel that? It's like, take a moment. Just, love this work, and thank you for being here and being present. I'm going to lower this just a little bit, even though I might might be ready to spit some bars really quickly. I want you to watch this time lapse of composting for many different reasons, and I hope that you can open up your minds and kind of just flow with me as we move here today with some things. Okay. The influence of capitalism over complex biological and social systems have historically contributed to climate change. With its intensive reliance on fossil energy, as a result of this colonization of nations and resources, over time we find economic and social inequality, along with environmental degradation. Through the convergence of globalization, industrial growth, coupled with neoliberal economics, we see that the concentration of power lies in private industry. Therefore, capitalists cannot create a market-based solution for climate change. There exist paradigm shifts in alternative systems that view humans as a part of nature and not separate from it. The role of capitalism as economic system has influenced climate change while attempting to co-opt the climate resistance movement. Its global acceptance has pillaged, devalued, and destroyed the symbiotic systems of indigenous cultural knowledge. Grounded in colonial principles, capitalism as a form of governance is exploitative and extractive. With production driven by private ownership, we see how the interests of corporations focus only on economic growth at the expense of the environment and human life. This flaw in logical thought also contributes to our disconnection from the environment in such a way that human life is seen as the dominant force when discussing such topics, with no acknowledgement of complex biological systems that enable us to even exist. I am referring to the Anthropocene. As a result of adopting this awareness, we see the effects of capitalism has globally in creating economic inequality through policies and systems of governance that value profit over people and all life. This neoliberal framework would agree that the most efficient governance is one that is deregulated in a perfect market while balancing costs and benefits. This means that when benefits clearly outweigh costs, optimization requires making standards more strict, resulting from increased regulation in order to maximize benefits. Economics frequently focuses on increasing efficiency by getting the most desirable result from the least amount of resources, whether it be labor or raw materials. Lowering overhead costs as the main drivers for decision-making in private firms. Unfortunately, because we do not have a truly democratic system in America, we see these same firms influence domestic and global politics in a way that supports their bottom line. Furthermore, this bottom line includes the commodification of nature by promoting it as a green economy, resulting in the creation of carbon markets, which lead to land grabbing that further exacerbate the climate crisis. Democratic eco-socialism is a way to combat climate change through worker-owned cooperatives and can redefine our relationship with capitalism and put the power back into the hands of the workers. Thank you. So I'm going to pause this and we're going to jump right into the presentation. And so again, thank you all for being here with me today. As I mentioned, my name is Dior St. Hillaire, and I am the founder of Green Fiend and Green Fiend Organics, which is a worker-owned cooperative. As Amanda mentioned earlier, we do a couple of different things. Green Fiend and Green Fiend Organics are two completely different organizations, and both of them collectively together, what we really do is we fight for environmental justice, one food scrap at a time. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means as we get into the presentation. So I really want to begin and start off by first telling you a little bit about who I am. I am all of these things and then some. This is all I could fit on this particular slide. I am a mother, as I mentioned at the very beginning. I am an environmental justice advocate. I am a daughter. I am a hip hop artist, an urban gardener. I am a waste warrior and entrepreneur. And one of the things I want to be clear about being an entrepreneur is not just because I have a business, but a real sense in being an entrepreneur is that we are solving a problem. And the reality is that this problem of food waste to landfills is huge, not only as it relates to the climate crisis, but really as it relates to just what we think about food justice as a whole. And so I really pride myself on that. And I'm very committed and passionate about the work that I do, because I recognize that it is not just for the benefit of one, but that it is for the benefit of all. And so I am a master composter here in New York City. I do actually do the physical labor of composting. We're in the process of trying to implement some sort of mechanization that can assist with our efforts. However, right now it's very much man-powered by me and volunteers and folks helping out. So just a little bit about who I am and what I am coming to you with right now. I also work with students as a teaching artist. So don't worry, we'll get into it. You'll be able to see some things, and we'll be able to get very, very excited into this. So, as I mentioned before, Green Fiend and Green Fiend Organics are two completely different entities. And that is because I understand the system in which we are in. And so with that being said, we have two different entities to fulfill two different needs and two different purposes. I just want to kind of clarify it before we jump into it, so that there's no confusion, as sometimes there is when people see the difference between the two. And so, as I mentioned earlier, with Green Fiend Organics, we actually are a worker-owned cooperative. And specifically what we do is we haul food waste locally and process it. So we're considered a micro hauler because the scale at which we collect these food scraps are very small in comparison to a larger hauler who may drive around with tons in a truck, the diesel trucks that are polluting the air and are really having an effect on the quality of life driving through certain neighborhoods. And so as a micro hauler, we look a little bit different. And again, I'm based in New York City, and so we have our own waste system, and it's different, really wherever you go. And so Green Fiend is really our nonprofit arm. We do a lot more work around education and consulting, and we really train youth for workforce development in the summer, where they get a chance to come to our site and actually learn a little bit more about composting and the composting process. So I'm gonna play these two videos for you, just because I want you to get a sense of like Green Fiend in action. I think this is really hard doing this, through a computer screen. Like right now, I can't like look at your faces and see your responses and see your body language, but it's okay. I feel your energy, and that is like just enough for me. So I'm gonna play this video. This is an event that we did at a local garden that we processed at. And to be quite honest, I don't have any photos of what we look like now, but amazing of what the progress has looked like over 2 years. So I'll play this really quickly for you, just so that you can get a sense of what we do at Green Fiend. It's important for us to have a garden, so this is where we started. Never forget and never get departed. How we put our hands to the soil and remember the earth. How we say ashe and touch the ground because we know where we birthed from. We say thank you to our ancestors and those who came before. We say thank you to our young people because they're going to come and do more. We know that we need a garden because we have to stop starving. We know that we need a garden because, this world is just so hard. And we know we need a El Jardín because it is what's good. We ask the people of the Bronx, yo, what's good? We need a garden to find our peace, to find our emotional, mental, and physical wellness. We need a garden because the garden needs you. We need the earth because we are it too. I am the founder of Green Fiend and Green Fiend Organics, which is a newly formed worker-owned cooperative. What we do is we use hip hop to promote sustainability, and we teach it through compost education and renewable energy. We actually have some volunteers take the compost bin down. We're gonna build some new compost bins. We're gonna probably make some bokashi brands today. We have BioClassic, which is another worker-owned cooperative over there as well. So we're just here, just in the garden, connecting with the community. These boxes, we honestly don't know what I'm gonna put in them yet. But it's essentially going to be like the easier, like the herbs, probably some flowers. These front three are mainly gonna be for our schools, and the back are more for community members. But up here are more for the schools, so we can use it as an educational tool. There's a lot of work to be done in this garden, but with volunteers like you and people coming out, as you can see, and the community members getting involved, we're gonna have a beautiful space, and that is what Synergy is about. So as I mentioned, that is just what we do at Green Fiend. We do a lot of work around helping to build up the local, yes ma'am? Okay, well, mommy will be with you in a second. as I mentioned, so I'm going to leave you with another video as we figure out what's happening over here. So that's the work that we do with Green Fiend, essentially. And with Green Fiend Organics, I will play this video for you. I did Venture Lab at my school. And who am I talking to? I'm talking to the people that are watching the presentation right now, if that's okay with you.
No people talk.
Well, yeah, you can't really see them, but they're there. And yeah.
That's me. That's you.
Yeah, that's okay.
You talking to yourself and them.
Well, no, I'm not talking to myself. But anyway, so as I mentioned, I gave full disclaimer about this. So this kind of highlights our work a little bit, just so that you can see again how we've been building out Green Fiend Organics as a work-owned cooperative.
What's fascinating to me here at the New School about social ventures and impact entrepreneurship is that there's a tremendous wealth of creativity that comes with students who are not just doing traditional MBAs, but that are coming from backgrounds and communities that have needs that have not been fulfilled by traditional business models. Social impact entrepreneurship allows students to launch their own creative talents and doing it while they're also making positive change in the world. Dior and Tim's project really speak to the possibilities for alternative futures.
My name is Dior St. Hillaire, and I'm getting my degree in environmental policy and sustainability management here at the New School. Most of our waste is actually shipped out of the city, and so that makes it environmentally inefficient and also economically inefficient. And so what we at Green Fiend want to do is we're going to say, hey, we will collect it locally and we will process it locally. I can take what I've learned at the New School and apply it in a way in which it could be tangible and successful.
My name is Tim Nottage, and I received my master's in theories of urban practice from Parsons School of Design at the New School. And I am now a member owner of Green Fiend Organics. I connected with Dior through my thesis advisor, Anna Baptista. Working with Anna Baptista was wonderful because she is actively engaged in environmental justice work in her community.
Here are two students that I think under any other circumstances probably would have never met in the real world. I knew as soon as they met, they would collaborate and support one another. Green Fiend as a business venture is really an embodiment of some of the best values that our programs try to promote. I think it really is a reflection of the potential that all of our students have to really create social change and blaze their own path.
Venture Lab is a social impact entrepreneurship class offered here at the New School. Creating change is not easy. It takes a lot of trying and failing and trying again. Through Venture Lab, we had the opportunity to pitch our business model, our methods, our roles as a team, and make our business into a launchable venture.
We're trying to deal directly with communities so that what we can do through our work is to be able to create green jobs. I genuinely feel like there are relationships that are being built that are going to be effective for the sort of paradigm shift that we want to see happen with the world.
The New School is really invested in training people to think critically about the systems we have now in order to build better systems.
Social entrepreneurship is not just a term. It is literally the way forward.
Let's figure out how we can continue to push local solutions.
Okay, so getting back into it. Now, one of the things about the New School, which is, you know, very near and dear to my heart with this program is that, you know, as Tim mentioned, very much focused on the critical analysis that comes truly with doing this work. And the ways in which we even figured out how to design the business model and like failing and then trying and then failing again and still learning from some things now. I think the reality is that when we think about social entrepreneurship, we really understand that we are able to build businesses that have impact, that are sustainable, and that benefit more than just the individual, which is one of the reasons why I talk a lot about taking your power back through worker ownership. So I'm going to show this final video, then we'll jump into the presentation a little bit more head at first for me to be able to kind of talk a little bit more about what I mean when I say to compost capitalism. And so just as an understanding of our business and like what we actually do, like how does it work, this video is kind of a little bit of an instructional about what Green Phoenix Organics does.
It's time to talk about rats and how to get rid of them. If you're in New York City, you know this is a huge problem. We feed them every time we dispose of food waste. 30% of New York City waste is organics, and when this waste ends up in the landfill, it creates methane, a greenhouse gas 84 times more potent than carbon dioxide. So how do we keep food scraps out of the trash and make rats mad? All Green Phoenix Organics, a local women-led worker-owned cooperative based in the Bronx, New York. Since the city suspended curbside collection of organics, also known as the brown bins, residents are scrambling to find options that rescue food waste. But that's not all. Farmers market drop-off locations were also cut, not to mention the education and advocacy New York City Compost Capitalism does. But we are fighting to save our compost so we can save our planet. We collect food waste like fruits, veggies, napkins, and even meat and dairy products. Visit our website, explore which service plan option is best for you, and sign up. We deliver your bucket, bio bag, and Bokashi brand 2 weeks after you sign up. What is Bokashi, you ask? After you sign up, you get a full instructional video detailing our compost method. It's that simple. And if you're really committed to community compost, join us for a work day at our garden. We process food scraps from our drop-offs. But where do your food scraps go? Back to the farm, as nature intended. We told you compost made easy. With a little bit of help, everyone can do it. So sign up today and join the Green Feed family. We are Green Feed Organics, and we are the Compost Co-op, making compost easy.
I really want to highlight this quote because this speaks very directly to when I talk about compost and capitalism, what it is that I'm actually talking about. There's no such thing as waste. And I tell people that all the time. When we talk about Green Phoenix as a slogan, we always tell people it's to rethink trash. To be quite honest, I have low-key become a little mini hoarder because it's hard for me to throw things out after I started this business. So as I work to clear out, let go, and just consume less, the reality is that everything has a use. And so even for myself, I'm figuring out what that means. I mean, you all literally a part of this conference just had as one of your workshops, I believe it was yesterday, as Amanda was telling me, where it was like, like don't scrap it, pass it, or I forget the exact name. And if I'm butchering it, Amanda, please like put it in the chat or something. But it's this idea that we can take things that are designated for the landfill or don't have any use in its original function and use it in another way. And to be quite honest, that is one of the things that I find very, very fascinating about Cubans and Cuban culture is that they really do have a different relationship with technology, where they can have an item, and if it doesn't serve a purpose anymore for its original use, they will take it apart. They have a very, very intimate relationship with it, as opposed to feeling like doesn't work, it's obsolete, and it gets thrown away. When in all actuality, they figure out what other use can it serve. And so I think that is a cultural thing that was born out of necessity. However, it still is, they have a very low carbon footprint. So I think that is something to note. So one of the things that I really want to talk about here, and talking about capitalism versus capitalism, is often I find that when I say things like compost capitalism, or if we're having any sort of conversation about capitalism as a system, that sometimes the response, right, is that, well, look at all the good things of capitalism. Look at all the benefits. If it weren't for capitalism, we would not have, right? And so I understand all of those things as it relates to modernization. However, it comes at the expense of people. And I think that is a point that is not really amplified at the beginning. If you think about the inherent nature and the root of capitalism, it would be nothing without the exploitation of human labor in order to get it to where we are now in this system. And so one of the things that I really want to point out is that when we think about capitalism, right, one of the things that really denotes it is private property, which is a vast, complete separation from indigenous understanding, when the land is meant for you to be used and for you to be able to give back to it, but you do not own it. And this is one of the things that I talk a lot about. Whatever conversations I get to have, I talk a lot about this idea of private property. And what capitalism says is that as long as my use of my private property doesn't interfere with the use of your private property, then we should be fine. And those lines are very gray and can quickly get crossed. And when we think about private property, you really are thinking about the exploitation of labor and land. And I think the reality is that, something cannot be yours that was stolen, or I guess it can be, especially given the sort of colonial system that we're living in. However, inherently, private property is just not something that aligns with our unity with the planet. And, I'll talk a little bit more about the compost aspect of this later, but the reality is that in exploiting the land, which means that we are extracting resources that cannot be put back, and in exploiting the labor, the people, we have so many different effects that we get as a result of that. We have to ask ourselves, right? Like, is it okay for another human to suffer just so that I can enjoy my life in the way in which I know it? And, a large part of this is like, how do I be a good human, right? And maybe some of you essentially don't care. And they're like, yeah, I really don't care who was exploited. But the reality is that those sorts of things have effects in the long term. And so another thing about capitalism is very self-motivated. It's very much about the self, and not necessarily focused on the whole. And so when I say that there's no concern for public safety or public health, I essentially mean that in a capitalist system where if the only goal that I have is to grow the company and to profit, that means that whatever happens as a byproduct, okay, whatever externality happens as a result of me doing that is not of my concern. That is a problem because we have societies, right, where government is supposed to protect its citizens. However, when it is influenced, again, by law and policy, what we find are systems that are actually not protecting the public as a whole, which is why we are where we are now. And so this idea of like, yes, free market economy, let the market fix itself, it'll correct itself, it is a perfect market. There is no such thing as a perfect market because the conditions cannot be controlled. The weather cannot be controlled. The people cannot be controlled to a certain extent. And so this idea of market correction is a little bit of a farce, especially, again, as I mentioned, when you have the interest of a private body who is only self-serving and very unconcerned with the externalities that come as a result of that. And one of the things about law and policy that is a relatively new study, which I find to be quite ironic, but it's relatively new in the sense that there is now this larger conversation around how these things are connected as it relates to the economy, that law and policy actually influence what happened with the economy, that actually it is not as much of a free market because you have regulations. It is not as much of a, kind of like wild, wild west system as we perceive it to be, simply because the laws and the policies create the sort of conditions in which you can work in. Okay, go downstairs with Nana. Maybe she has something for you. Go with Nana. Nana told me to tell you to go with her. Hey, okay. So sorry, y'all. Let me just let my mother know that she's coming. I told y'all. Okay, so yeah, so what I'm really saying about that is that the law and policy actually creates the conditions in which capitalism can function, which is why you see how much these sort of private corporations are able to influence this exact law and policy. So shall we move on? One of the things I always tend to do, especially if I am teaching students, I love going back to the principles of environmental justice, right? Many of us, may already know about, Oh, she can't open a door. Oh, shoot. 2 seconds, y'all. Literally 2 seconds. I promise you I'll be right back. I'm coming. And like full transparency, she probably would have been with me if I was actually in California right now. Anyway, so why I like to really talk about the principles of environmental justice is because people came together from all around the world in order to come up with these tenets. And I think that they are very, they speak to me in a very direct way, especially in a very direct way on how I can shift my, not only my thinking, but also the way in which I choose to act. And so I only pulled out like 3 of them. There's 17, and I wanted to read these out loud and talk about them a little bit. Let's get a little bit of water. So in talking about why capitalism can't work for all, we got to break up with capitalism, y'all. It's a hard truth. It is a hard reality to face. I get it. It looks like us having to sacrifice maybe the little bit that we have. It looks like us having to share maybe in moments where we don't want to. But the reality is that we can create a system where our bodies are not abused and where our bodies are not treated as commodity, where our bodies and our labors and our minds are not used as a tool of manipulation and force for the global world. And so the first one is to affirm the sacredness of Mother Earth, the ecological unity and the interdependence of all species, and the right to be free from ecological destruction. Capitalism does not align with this, simply because, especially as we think about the ways in which we extract resources, we have a very, very disposable culture here in America, very, very disposable. And what that says is that I don't have to think about where the trash goes, and I don't have to think about the resources that went into making this particular thing. And all of the animals that had to die or were sacrificed as a result of it in the process, and the people's health also as well. So that interdependence is very important, and capitalism does not promote that. So, right? Can't work for all. And the all, let's be clear, especially in thinking about the Anthropocene, the all is just not us as human beings. The all is also the microorganisms. The all is also the animals and the aquatic. Like the all is literally every single living thing that exists on this planet. And so environmental justice also affirms the need for urban and rural ecological policies to clean up and rebuild our cities in rural areas and balance with nature, honoring the cultural integrity of all of our communities and providing fair access for all to a full range of resources. Again, capitalism is very bootstrap sort of mentality, right? I've earned mine, you go earn yours. I've put in my work, you go put in your work. With that sort of thinking, that immediately casts out a whole group of people who literally are marginalized and come at a disadvantage and have to work 10 times as hard to get the small rewards that some people with privilege are able to access. And so if we're really going to think about what it looks like for our cities to be in balance with nature, then that looks like an overhaul of the way in which we think about a lot of our systems and the way that we even think about the cultural significance of the people that actually occupy these spaces. And so the final thing that I will put is literally the exact opposite of capitalism, which is, it opposes the destructive operations of multinational corporations. Capitalism cannot work for all. These principles of environmental justice, I feel, are a great tool and a great guide in order to help us shift our thinking, shift our action, and to really have a tangible access to what the possibilities can actually be if we're creative enough and think outside of the box and push ourselves past a lot of these things. So, I wanted to talk about some of these terms because when thinking about composting capitalism, and I'm going to keep referring to the term so that you understand what it is that I'm ultimately trying to say, we have to take a system that is no longer working. We have to take something that we cannot use anymore and make it a benefit to all. So when I talk about waste equity, and you'll see on the next slide with some photos, when I talk about waste equity, I'm really talking about the equal distribution of waste, right? And what that means is we're not exporting our waste outside of New York City, right? To other states, to other countries. What that means is that we figure out a way to handle our waste, even if it has to be within New York State, because the reality is that New York City just is too dense for all this waste to be handled. But we also need to have a really, really serious conversation about conservation, right? We have to have a serious conversation about consuming less. And that's a hard thing for some people, because it's like, look, I want it. And I struggle with this as well, right? And so I always want to encourage people that as we're talking about shifting, it's less about being perfect and more about being intentional. So if there's something that I know that I can get locally, or if there's something that I can get directly from someone, or if it's something that I can make myself, right? What can I pull from in my local resources as opposed to just ordering on Amazon? It's the easiest thing to do. Promise you, I understand it, right? I order things on Amazon still. And there are some people that have completely divested from Amazon and are like, I'm not buying anything. But the reality, right, is as a business owner, we still have needs, and needs have to be met in order to be able to provide a quality service to our customers. And so as we navigate and figure that out, so like, yes, I may, buy from Amazon, but I also bank with a B Corp bank that is a local bank in the Bronx, right? So there are layers of what this looks like, and it's not really a sort of Olympics to figure out, who's the most sustainable of them all. It's just a matter of us really trying to think about ways in which we can do some different things and continue to adopt different practices throughout our lives and throughout time, and how we're sharing that with other people. So with waste equity, just getting back to that, here in the Bronx, we process over 30% of the city's waste. And what that means is that, we have trash coming in from other boroughs. And what that does is that pollutes our neighborhoods and makes it dirty. It really affects the air quality. It is a nuisance with the trucks coming in and out. They are loud. There's so many different things, health aspects as a result of these poor waste practices. But the South Bronx has been targeted, right? And it is definitely an environmental justice community. And so when I talk about NIMBY essentially means not in my backyard. And it is people who have the ability to advocate for these sorts of things not to come into their neighborhoods because they have political influence and affluence. And the reality, right, when we talk about equity, is that we have to take into account the conditions, again, that created what it is that we're dealing with right now. And so when I talk about waste equity, these are some of the things that I'm talking about that capitalism kind of supports, right? And thinking about it as a whole, as a system. And so when I talk about food waste versus wasted food, this is a big deal, really big deal. Especially we have volunteers that come in and they get a chance to see what we're talking about, up close and personal. There's a difference between a food scrap, which is like, okay, this is something as a result of me cooking, and food that I just did not eat, that's spoiled, that I'm like, all right, I'll feel better about composting it. But in all actuality, you wasted so many resources that went into actually growing that food and getting it to you. So it is very important, again, when we living in such a system of capitalism does not breed scarcity, right? It doesn't breed scarcity, at least here in comparison to other places around the world. It is definitely, we have food deserts where, there's also this idea of food apartheid, right? Where this is intentional. This is not something that is done as a result of just like poor practices, but this is very, very intentional. And so, I want to be clear that this idea that we can just always get more, or that more will always be there, is a very capitalist sort of understanding. And I think it's very deep rooted in ways in which we may have to challenge in uncomfortable ways to see how we are influenced at it. And again, even myself, influenced at a very deeper level. And so sustainable development goals, woo, y'all, one of the things that I will definitely say is don't be so quick to rally behind what is considered sustainable development. Because again, when I mentioned that capitalists will not come up with the solutions for climate change, one, because capitalism caused them, right? However, again, the goal is still to serve the self-interest of the company. So now we have a whole company and it's like, yeah, we're going to have these carbon credits. We're going to offset this carbon gray. We're going to go plant a bunch of trees somewhere else. So I'm going to keep polluting the environment. And as long as I'm planting trees somewhere else, then that means that I get to offset the harm that I'm giving to the environment. We don't realize that when we go into these countries, again, into these foreign countries, and we're taking up their land, we're taking up their space, we're displacing their people, we're poisoning their water, we're poisoning their air, all in the name of sustainable development. So it's very important that we interrogate what that means, what that looks like. How do local communities have power over what is happening? How do they have, and this is when we get back to environmental justice, but how are they a part of the decision making, right? Not that they are an afterthought, but that you are coming to them and you are asking for their permission. And that is not what we see happening, especially in underdeveloped countries who have a need for resources. And so sometimes will agree to something that may seem like it will be helpful, when in all actuality, as most things that are sold to us under capitalism, is just a guise. And so I want to encourage you that as you think about sustainable development, like even this, right? Solar panels, we're like, yay, solar, yay, wind power. But are we talking about the materials that it takes, right? Like, yay, electric vehicles. What does it take? What minerals are we extracting out of the environment in order to create these things? And I'm not saying this to you in order to make it feel like it's a lose-lose situation, but I think it's important that we're mindful of, one, the resources that may already exist, that we need to get creative in how we actually are utilizing some of these things. Or, okay, what are we doing with these things when they're done? Wind turbines, after they're done, the use is done, they are like one of the biggest pollutants, okay? What do we do with them? What do we do with them? There are some companies that are getting very creative because it's very hard to chip up. It's huge, you know? So anyway, I'll stop that tangent, but I'm saying all that to say that let's continue to interrogate when we're looking at solutions, let's interrogate even more, right? Like, okay, this is a great idea. Just as we're going to interrogate capitalism, we want to also interrogate what we are presenting as sustainable development goals. And just transition, that is just saying, okay, now we're going to go from this very fossil fuel heavy, sort of industry to, all right, let's be more renewable. Now the workers that were in that industry, how are we going to make sure that their rights are protected as workers and that they can still have a quality of life in this transition? So a just transition is fair, it is just, and it is equitable. So I mentioned to you that I was going to show you a photo, and this is a series of photos, and we'll go through them a little bit. This one that you see here up in the upper left-hand corner is more for NIMBY, right? This is the not in my backyard, right? Like, we need this, we need that, we need that. And we're like, all those things sound great, just don't want it where I live. And that is the reality of most people. Don't get me wrong. People have homes. They're like, look, I want either, again, here we go with that property value. I want my property value to be protected, right? And if all these things are happening around me, it's going to drive down the price of my property value. I am not negating that if you invest in a piece of property that you should want to protect it. I am not negating that. That is not what I'm saying. But it is to say, again, at what cost? And I think that this is essentially what we have to continue to ask ourselves, right? So NIMBY essentially says that, yeah, it won't be in your neighborhood, but it'll be in mine. I live in the Bronx, okay? I'm clear about what it is that I see around me. Why is it that I who live in a borough that is essentially the greenest borough of New York City, why is it that I'm dealing with most of the city's trash? Also, in North Brooklyn and Southeast Queens. But it is to say that somebody said that my life wasn't as important. Somebody said that my life wasn't as meaningful. Somebody said that it really didn't matter, who I was, because this was convenient for their bottom line. And so again, you have to ask yourself, at what cost and who does this actually affect? Now, in the lower right-hand corner, this is where we talk about equity, right? I'm sure some of you have seen this photo floating around. It has gone around for a really long time, but I thought it was a great, it captured the essence, right, of what it is. And when we talk about waste equity, what is it that when we talk about liberation, and that's a whole, when I talk about compost and capitalism, that is essentially what I'm trying to speak to, y'all. I am speaking to what does it look like to liberate ourselves and break up. I said it earlier, right? Like, let us break up with capitalism. It's hard. And I always give the analogy, which is sometimes a difficult one to swallow, and I completely understand. But I always give the analogy of capitalism feeling like a domestic violence sort of relationship, right? Where sometimes you're like, oh, well, like it got some good things. It's giving me some good things. Like, no matter that it's beat me up, right? No matter that it is having power, exerting power over my life. Like, let's forget about all the other things that happen, but let me just come back for this good stuff. And, for me, breaking up with capitalism it's hard. It's a hard thing to do. And some of us have done it years ago, right? But we exist in this system. And one of the reasons why I talk about composting capitalism is because it is a system that we currently are in. It is what we know. And to completely get a whole different system is difficult. We have to transition. That takes a real serious radical act. And I think it will start from maybe a microcosm of folks, and maybe can branch out. But what I see happening is that we take, quote unquote, right, the best of capitalism, and we transform it and we break it down to the bare minimum. And we'll talk more about that later, but we break it down so much so that it is unrecognizable. And then we create something that is for the benefit of all. And so again, this other photo here, when I was talking about the food waste versus wasted food, these are some of the things that you'll just find that really kind of make up food justice as a whole. And it's important that we are very mindful just in what it is that we're taking in, what it is that we're buying, and really just thinking about where our food comes from. Sometimes I think people don't really understand the amount of energy that goes into producing food. So, it is important, please, not to waste it. So I'm going to direct you to this. I'll click on it, we'll get to it. But I want you to take a brief moment to kind of see New York City's waste system. And as I mentioned to you, each waste system, it looks different, whether it's in New York, whether it's California, whether it's Detroit. There's some places where you got to pay a fee, right, to have your municipal waste collected. It's not like that in New York City. It comes out of our taxes. But for some folks, they got to pay a direct fee for their trash in certain neighborhoods. So it's very much set up different in different places. And we have what are known as waste transfer stations, which essentially means this is where all of the waste goes, and then it gets shipped out either in the larger trucks or by barge or by rail. And so a lot of it goes by rail, but this is, again, it gets transferred to different places. And I'm going to click on this so that you can see what it looks like. And I really appreciate this particular way of looking at it, because it is a very, great snapshot and analysis, right? So this is what we see happening to our black bags, which is essentially where all of the trash are, right? And then we get paper and metal, glass, and plastic that are separated. And then again, they're going to these facilities, right? So you can see, I live in the Bronx, which is like up there. So right, now that they've gone from New York City to New Jersey, now we see it going to other parts of the country, right? And this is really just to say, and then now where do we see it going? Now we see it going to other parts of the world. And why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Because we're saying that there are societies, there are some places that have decided that they're not even going to take our waste anymore because of this. So I just really want to point out that, we really want to be mindful of waste practices in general, right? And I think the better understanding that you have with your own, let's say your own local system, the more you'll understand about what's actually happening and if this stuff is actually being recycled or what have you. And so we'll talk a little bit more later about how our work supports this, which is jumping into it right now. So one of the things that we do is we really help to keep food waste out of landfills. And as you noticed earlier in the video, in New York City, we had a robust program. And while it had, some inefficiencies, as all things that are starting off trying to find their way, it was one that was really talked about and going to be looked at as the future, and as it relates to just sustainability in an urban environment when it comes to keeping food waste out of the landfills. And they cut the program. They cut the program because of COVID, and there are other places that did not recognize that COVID hit hard, but that this was something that definitely was valuable and needed to be sustained. And again, when you're thinking about the law and policy and the influence of it, we're thinking about COVID. And unfortunately, in the Bronx, we got hit very hard because we have the highest rates of asthma in the country. And we understand COVID as a respiratory sort of illness. And unfortunately, we got hit very hard, not to mention with all of these trucks that are coming in. So you would think that we would keep something that would help us to keep this stuff out of the landfills, but it was cut nonetheless. And so we've stepped up and said that, you know what, we'll take some residential waste. We traditionally have serviced commercial clients, and we said, okay, we'll start helping residents divert it. Not everybody can do it, obviously, because we charge a fee, but it is literally the least that we can do in trying to make sure that we can help to keep the food waste out of the landfills. And so we do advocate at the legislative level. We give testimony. We are present for all of the things that are happening. There were like a waste equity signing bill that we were able to be present for. There were so many things that have been happening here in New York City that we've been a part of, and we've been able to really help support and galvanize around, even down to Save Our Compost. They cut the budget completely, but we were able to work together and save a portion of the budget, albeit it was a really big chunk that was cut. But it is to say that we were still able to come together and save something from it to help us continue to do this work. We also organized with other micro haulers in the city. We literally just had a meeting yesterday, trying to figure out like some sort of trade association, which is really exciting because we are creating and shaping a market segment for ourselves here in New York City, which is, you know, we have people that have really been leading the push for that. So that's been really exciting to be a part of. Being able to engage with the community and volunteers, like, it's a big deal. One, it's really difficult to sustain your organization on volunteers, but also what a great way to connect to people and to be able to give your time to something. So whether you're physically, you know, out doing something, or whether you're, you know, behind a computer and helping out an organization, do what you can. We had a student, you know, who came to us from Fordham, who was very instrumental in helping us out with our social media. And she's like, yeah, it's for my class project. And she volunteered her time. And obviously the benefit for her was the experience, but also what she was able to give for her class, but it helped us as well. And so that just that exchange of values, I think is very important that we continue to get creative. And that's kind of when you think about composting, it's a very creative process, right? Some people are like, yeah, let's do these worms at home. Some people are like, let's build these windrows. Some people are like, let's get this ASP pile going. Some people are like, no, let's do anaerobic. Others are like, let's do thermophilic composting. Like there's so much creativity that comes in composting. And, you know, that's what's really, really dope about it as well, about connecting with people and recognizing collectively how you can be creative about coming up with these solutions. And when I'm talking about composting capitalism, again, these are all of the sort of things that I'm bringing into that together. And so we also teach youth about green activism, which is like near and dear to my heart. I absolutely love it. I love connecting with young people. I love to teach. It is, even in this moment, right, I'm able to kind of just share some of my work with you all, and it's super exciting. And we teach them about the local structure in New York City. We teach them about the process. We teach them about how a bill actually becomes a law. They understand about how to advocate in their own communities. They understand the structure, like we have what are called community boards here in New York City, and that is where you're able to actually like go community boards. You have to usually get letters of support to try to come into the community to build certain things. Like all of these things matter. And so when you're there and you put yourself, and really immerse yourself in these sort of decision-making places, you will find that is like one of the places where change actually really can be affected. And so, really showing young people and inspiring them how to be active with it is really, really a joy for me. And you'll see later, I have a video of some young folks of an exercise that we had done together. And again, as I mentioned, we use hip hop to teach new concepts and spread awareness. I absolutely love hip hop. I love to rap. I love to rhyme. I do it with my daughter. I do it with my students. And maybe I'll get to do it with you today if we have enough time, which would be super, super dope, because I love to do it. And this is how we bring people in. We connect people. We teach, right? We teach with it as well. And it's been a great tool up until this point. So one of the quotes that actually came from one of my professors was that solidarity is not some moral act. It is a rational choice. And when I talk about composting capitalism, I'm talking about solidarity. I'm talking about you breaking up with capitalism. I'm talking about you saying, you know what? I recognize that this thing may only serve me or is not serving me, but that it doesn't serve all. And that while I may be uncomfortable, that through my discomfort, I will grow. And through that discomfort, I will be able to align myself with the sort of values that I want to see for my children, that I want to see for the world, that I want to see even when I am not here. And that's one of the things about sustainability, is that the definition of it inherently is about being able to meet today's needs, right? Without compromising the needs of those in the future. And so I really love this idea of, us not making this a moral sort of debate. This is not a moral debate. This is a rational choice based on what we've seen happen historically and what we see happening right now in front of our eyes. And so, I think people are beginning to connect with different things now in different ways. And so, I look forward to what solidarity continues to look like. So again, what does it mean to compost capitalism, right? It essentially is us working together. We're going to deconstruct what no longer serves us as individuals and create something that works for all. And so when you look down here, one of the things I really wanted to point out about this process that I really enjoyed in this video I've been showing y'all, and I'll just continue to show you because I think it's such a beautiful thing, when you realize that there are so many different microorganisms that come together to create this compost. There are going to be so many different people that come together to create a new way of exchange and a new way of doing things. It is going to be the student, it is going to be the parent, it is going to be the activist, it is going to be the business owner, it is going to be the government official, it is going to be that old lady that you know up the block, it is going to be the local store owner, it is going to be the school. It is literally going to be different people at different stages and at different times and at different moments coming together to be able to compost this system that is parasitic, to compost this system that is exploitative, to compost this system that is not going to sustain itself. There's no such thing as linear. We have to continue to look at circular linear. When what goes up with gravity must come down. And so if we want to have a system, right? If we want to have a life that is cyclical, that is feeding, that is giving us life, that is able to renew and restore, then what we are going to have to do is make some changes that are going to be hard. And so like you see here at the bottom, there are first level decomposers, there are second level, there are third level. They all exist at different spaces at different times. But guess what? They all got to work together. They all got to work together. They all got to work together to get this ending goal. And that is really what it is that I want to give to you coming out of this conversation, is that you understand that, yes, it is a consumer choice at the individual level, but it's also a philosophical shift in the way that you think about things. It is also a shift in how you have conversations with your family members. It is a shift in how you invest your money and what you give your time and your resources to. All of these things work together to get us this end result of what it is that we're looking for. That at some point, guess what, down the line, it may also change because it may no longer serve the needs. But at least we know that we put all this energy. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. What we get, y'all, for those of y'all who may know composting or not, that compost and that black gold can be used for everybody. That, oh my God, the beautiful benefits of compost and what it does for the soil, what it does for the nutrients in the plants. Whew. That's what I want to see for the world. I want to see that we are taking responsibility and accountability for the things that we are doing, that we are holding these corporations responsible, holding them responsible and accountable, right? So part of what composting capitalism looks like to me is, all right, we're in a system, right? Okay, got it. Y'all have these systems, y'all are exploiting people, okay, fine. Make it a worker-owned cooperative. And now all these corporations make them worker-owned cooperatives. Because what happens now? All right, you're still functioning, right? But now you have to consider the thoughts and opinions and votes of other people. And now you have to share the profits a little bit different. It look a whole lot different. There's a whole lot more accountability and worker ownership. And so I am a big supporter of it. So part of it, what it looks like to me in composting capitalism is like, all right, well, maybe we're shifting the way in which we share these resources. So I'm gonna play this video, and I really want you to sit with yourself before I play this and ask yourself, how do you imagine the future? You know, how do you imagine the future? Is it you? Or do you see yourself in the future? Are you thinking about a future where you are no longer here, but you're thinking about the future for your, future children? We always talk about that. What kind of legacy do you really want to leave? And so, again, as I mentioned, we use hip hop. These are my students. I was super proud of them. I worked with them at a workshop a few years ago, and we did what we call like a rhyme for the time. And we sat down, we learned some concepts, we threw a beat on. I asked them what beat they wanted. They picked the beat that they wanted. And they wrote a couple things. I won't play the entire video because it is, you know, relatively long, and for the sake of time, just we're at 8 o'clock now. But I will play it. I'll play like the first 2 minutes of it, but I want you to feel the energy of these students. And to be honest with you, when I think about the future, I think about young people. And that is really because I grew up around that. My mother was a big youth advocate. So I really grew up seeing how she was able to pour into young people and the effects that it had on their lives, and especially me as well, right? Being able to sit here and talk to you, how she pours into my daughter. And so really thinking about young people is important for me to expose them to the thoughts, ideas, and concepts that will inspire them to make change, because as we know, it is usually the young folks that do it. So I will share with you this video that we recorded, or somebody else recorded, I didn't record it, that they basically, we did our little concepts, our little rhyme for the time, and they wrote a little something. All right, go. Same energy, you classmates. All right, with that, you know who you got. What part you got? What you got to say? What you got to say? Tell the people you can mess with us if you wanted to. Turn you green, then to blue, like the earth would do. I don't really got to let them know to you respect, and I really know what I mean. We agree to agree. No excuse to plead. Just turn green. Never taught this, but I'm older now, and I'm proper this. I ain't changing my ways. Good grade. All grown now, no time to play. Get it right, no childish way. Said I'm me. Yes, I'm a bee. Hey. Y'all good? Y'all want to go? You want to tell? Come on, girl. You got it? Okay. You gonna stay supporting? Yep, them bars is coming. We ready. Walking through the city streets and seeing all that trash. Looking there, see some people burning it all into ash. But you know, we the people, we can fight for our justice. What we need is a voice and do something very different. So we see that respect needed for environment. Learning to bond earth, which we try hard to protect. Stop the poison, stop destruction. We need our land in potion. So we got Mother Nature, tree and park protection. Yeah! Okay. So that was just a little tree so that you see, again, when I think about the future, I think about these young people, I think about these children, I think about the energy that they are going to give and the things that they are going to pursue and what they're inspired to actually do. And so, yeah, you know, the global South and the rest of the world should no longer have to suffer for our comfort and privilege in the global North. As you can see here, in order for us to stand up and live and all of this, they have to support us. And enough is enough. You know, it's time for us to do something different. Climate change is here. It is not, you know, there's no time clock or anything on it. We are here, we are in it, and it is now. The time is now for us to change and do some things different. So, you know, this is the part, right? And maybe we'll come back to it. I'll let us do the Q&A, but this was the part where I really want you to begin to think about some things, right? Like, type it in the chat. What did you learn? When you hear the term compost capitalism now, what is the first word that like comes to mind for you? And what will you give up so others can receive? And so, you know, feel free to type that in the chat. I wanted to throw in a beat while I put that in the chat, and we're gonna make a collective song here together, because that is what I do. That is what we do together. And that's how we build community. And one of the last things that I wanted to leave you with and also share, shout out to my professor, Leonardo Figueroa. He is amazing. And there are so much more resources here, but I think it's important that we continue to read and study and see different organizations and ways around the world that are really kind of living out what it is that we want to do. It's always important, what they say, not to reinvent the wheel. So we really want to be able to look towards others. So I'll leave my information with you on the next slide. And so if you're interested, if you want more of these, I have a whole comprehensive document about so many different things and different topics. If you really want to just see more of this, let me know. And I'm more than happy to share and talk with you about what it is that you want. And yeah, feel free to follow us on Instagram if you already aren't. We are at Green Fiend. This is my email. This is my telephone number. And this is the website for our work-owned cooperative. And yeah, I really appreciate the time that you've allowed me to share with you today, and all the interruptions with my daughter. And I don't know what I look like talking in the screen because all I can see is this presentation. But thank you for giving your time and being here and present for this conference. And I truly hope that what you take from this experience is that you do have an effect, but it starts from the internal. Right, it starts from the internal, and really, truly, if we want to get to where we want to get to as it relates to climate change, if you're really about mitigating climate change, I'm going to ask you to break up with capitalism. So, thank you, and that is my presentation.
Thank you so much, Dior. There's multiple times throughout the presentation where I just stopped and said, "Wow, your energy." What you're saying, we're also engaged. I could imagine everybody sitting at home when your daughter comes in, people that I know in the audience who also have kids laughing, because this is what capitalism has done to us. We're working from home. It's just so ironic and so on theme with everything that you're saying about the youth. And that's why we're doing this conference and trying to reach students at our university and get them to engage in these topics. So just from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. And I would love to work on the rhyme first, and then there's a couple questions in the Q&A, and if you have those questions, put them in the Q&A and we'll get to them. But let's bust out a rhyme.
Yes. Okay. So let me get a nice beat going here. I usually do chill hop. It's a whole lot easier. Let me pull it up. And again, please don't mind my nasal disposition over here. Okay. So I'm going to let me speed you up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is ask y'all questions, and from there I will write. And that's how we'll write it together. We'll write lines together, right? So the first question that I was asking, right, was, what have you learned? Just give me one thing that you have learned so far from having this conversation. Well, it's not really a conversation. You need somebody to talk back. But what have you learned sitting here, listening to me talk to you for an hour and 8 minutes? All right. So first thing we got, capitalism must end to see real environmental justice. Thank you. All right, here we go. We're gonna start with that. Capitalism, it must end. Capitalism, it must end. I said capitalism, it must end. If we really gonna see environmental justice for who? For you, for me. Let's see. Okay. Capital justice, it must end. Capitalism, it must end. Capitalism, it must end in order to see environmental justice. All right, I'm gonna get that. We gonna pause that line. That's gonna be what we get. Okay, in order to see, this is how we build. I'm gonna come back to the chat, so y'all just keep shooting it out in order to end. Okay, here we go. All right, so what else did we learn? What else did we learn? We learned you cannot be perfectly sustainable. You shouldn't kill yourself over it, only do better. Thank you. Some of us are a little bit too fanatic about it. I'm like, I get it, but please, we're all doing our best. Okay, here we go. So what do we gotta do? You cannot be perfect. It's perfectly imperfect to be sustainable, for the earth is worth it. Sorry, y'all, go off the top, so I didn't write that down, but it's recorded, so I'll get it later. We're gonna do a whole compilation. We're gonna do a whole compilation where I will put this all together and send it to y'all as a thank you, and I will record the rhyme. But that's good. I like that. I like that. I like that. I like that. Then, in order to be sustainable, you don't want to be perfect. Make it attainable. We aren't really trapped in capitalism. It's true. We can create a new system. I see y'all here, Jerry, with the bars. You didn't need help with that. You just gave me bars, and that's usually what I have my students do. I'll be like, you write a bar, and I will put them together. Good job, Jerry. Thank you. Okay. Communities need to be like a composting system. Creative, collaborative, and local. Thank you so much, Chrissy. All right, let me see if I can put that in there. Because now I'm excited. I just want to go up top now. I just want to go up top. So what can we write? Communities need to, communities need to be, I say communities need to see, I say communities need to see, I say communities need to be, I say communities need to be, I say communities need to be like a composting system. Actually, composting system, actually, there we go. Communities need to be, communities need to be, I said communities need to be like a composting system. Actually, that means, what was it you put? You put creative, collaborative, and local. So let me see, we got creative, collaborative, local, imaginative, vocal. Okay, you're lying, okay. So communities need, I know I like that beat, I'm gonna take that back. I'm going to take that beat back because that beat felt good. I felt like there was a nice collective flow we had happening here. I'm gonna keep that same energy going. There we go. Let's take that back. Okay, so we had communities need to be like a composting system. Actually, creative, collaborative, and local, imaginative, vocal. What's next? All right, what we got next? I learned that our actions should be intentional. We have to remind ourselves that we are defending. Capitalism must end, or else it'll end us. The image of composting reminds us that there is no such thing as waste. That is a lie, and I'm going to make it happen. Let's see. I got skills. The creator has blessed me with some skills. What can I do with that? Let's see. I learned that our actions are intentional, just like my name. They say I'm Enya and I'm versed with soul. So my actions need to be intentional. My actions need to be intentional. Like my name, Enya, I am just so versatile. Here we go. Oh, just for those y'all who don't know what I'm talking about. I like I am so versatile. My name is Enya, also in my African Rights of Passage community, and it means when my intentions are clear, I run towards my purpose. And so yes to intentions. So we got and like my name, Enya, I am so versatile. Reminding ourselves that we are defending just more. Reminding ourselves that we are defending more. Defending. What are we defending? Remind ourselves that we are defending. That we have to remind ourselves what we are defending. Okay, yeah. So reminding ourselves that we are defending more than just what looks like for us and what we got in store. That we are defending more than just what meets the eye. What meets the eye? I like that. Reminding ourselves that we are defending more than what meets the eye. Okay, I'm gonna keep going to that. I'm gonna put a blank there. Come back to that. What we got? It must end, or it will end us. We only got one earth. I'm telling you, must trust. It must end, or it will end us. It must end, or it will end us. We only got one planet. Just trust. All right, what else we got here? The image of composting reminds us that there is no such thing as waste, and what we do in our backyard is our planet's backyard. That's good. Okay. So the other NIMBY means we're destroying others' backyards. Yes. I don't know how long y'all still want me to go. You let me know, Amanda. But the other part after that was the one word that which some of you all put, right? Like when you think about compost capitalism, I appreciate that, right? Cooperative, accountability. So I'm going to take that. I'm going to take those words. If you want to put out some more, go for it. So when we think about compost capitalism, cooperative, compost capitalism. My mama's kids, that's me. So we got compost capitalism, cooperative. I like that. That's a really great word. Capitalism, cooperative, compost capitalism, my mama's kids, compost capitalism, which means evolve, So compost capitalism, which means evolve. Circular economy, we leaving. No leaving stars. Okay, so we have compost capitalism, cooperative. Compost capitalism, my mama kids. Compost capitalism, which means evolve. Circular economy, we leaving no scars. Compost capitalism, regenerative. Too many syllables. What else? I put that for something else. What we got? Did anybody else have any other words for when you hear compost capitalism? What do you think? What do you think? Okay, worker owned, not owned workers, right? I love that. I love that. If you have any other words, y'all let me know, because I can keep going. I can keep afloat. I feel really good when I'm international, but it's just coast to coast. It's coastal, but I'm feeling really good with my flow. Don't you know? She said, circular loop, growth, not linear. Going in the circle means we can be plentiful. And I'm looking for myself to the left and the right. I ain't write no rhymes for this particular bite, but I could keep going when the beat stop. It don't really matter, because I know when my flow drop. I'ma keep going because I go for the earth. I flow for the sun and I flow for the dirt. The dirt that got soil in it. When it's compost, it stay living. I got my baby, she stay winning. Compost capitalism, then we'll all be not sinning. I don't know, maybe not that one, but I'm here for it. Amanda, do we want to shift gears? Because I will go like this all night, and I know people probably got places to be, but this is like the essence of what I really love and enjoy about doing this work, is getting creative with other folks. So thank y'all for participating in that.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing your passion and just sharing your gift of your rhyme. I hope everyone is just sitting behind their computers like me, like, this is so fun. And yes, record that rhyme and send it back to us, and we will send it out to the world for everyone to hear. If anyone has any questions, send them into the Q&A now. We do have one, and it comes from a student in the audience. They say, how close are we to incorporating this knowledge into elementary and middle school curriculum across the country? And I think when they say this knowledge, they're talking about the fall of capitalism and maybe commerce.
Yeah, I don't think we are. I mean, the whole educational system is built to help sustain and maintain capitalism. So to be quite honest with you, I don't think that we're close at all. I would say that what I believe is that, you see more things like homeschooling communities happening and popping up. That's where you see a lot of the challenge to education, like unschooling communities. That is where I see it happening, is people actually pulling their students out of the school. You might find some schools that are like, will promote themselves as progressive. And while that is an alternative, the reality is that it's very difficult when you are funded by the very same system that you are trying to fight against. And I know educators that also find it difficult, where they thought they've been getting into environments where they would essentially be able to change the curriculum or influence the curriculum differently, and still have felt a lot of resistance to leadership as a result of it. So, changing the curricula in schools around the country, to be quite honest with you, I think that we're still very far from that. Like, sustainability is still treated as this outside thing and not like literally engulfed in the entire curriculum, which is the way that it should be. Oh, you don't want to ask your question anymore, Jerry? Jerry's like, I asked it, but nope, it's already been answered. Thanks, though. But I do want to touch on it a little bit, right? Just because I do think that I don't want to ignore that, because of the system that we are in. Let's be clear about it, right? Nobody's saying that these companies are not going to be a part of the change. You better believe that they may actually even be not necessarily leading it, but the pressure being put on them is what will force them to have to change. There were like this dairy farm that was like the biggest dairy farm that went out of business because people stopped drinking milk. Like, when you realize that you have so much power in your consumer choices, that where you spend your money says a lot about what it is that you do. And so, I don't think that capitalism is going to solve the climate crisis, because I think capitalism created the climate crisis. I think that as a school of thought, again, that it's very self-serving. So the way that I see it happening is that companies that are willing to invest in the renewable technology industry, those are going to be the ways in which I think we will see how companies really play a large part in it. The carbon markets are very controversial, as I stated earlier. So as much as I would like to be like, oh yeah, those would be great, and way, incentives for businesses to want to participate. No, the reality is that the law and policy is going to have to influence them so much in order to make a change, that they're going to be essentially regulated in order to do it. So that is, what essentially I think. But thank you, Jerry, for asking and then kind of tapping enough into this presentation to get your answer.
Thank you so much, Dior, from the bottom of our hearts in Humboldt County. We are just so happy to host you and to share this space with you.
I appreciate it so much. Thanks, y'all.
As a reminder, we have events going on all week. You can view the event schedule at humboldt.edu/events/sustainability. I'm actually hosting a cooking class right now at 5:30, so log on and we're going to get funky in the kitchen. Low waste, of course, and organic.
Bye, y'all.
See you.